The freighter, Celestial Marauder, shuddered as its ion engines kicked against the swirling magenta clouds of Ashura 9. Through the reinforced viewport, the world below was a roiling sea of violet and crimson storms, lightning forks dancing like electric serpents through the thick miasma. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, each tremor a reminder of how few had ever dared to breach this planet's upper atmosphere, and lived. Aboard the observation deck, Zirthal perched on a broad, steel-plated perch that the crew had installed just for him. His wings, draped along either side like banners of burnished metal, flexed as he adjusted his weight. The warm glow of bioluminescent ridges along his spine pulsed in time with his steady breathing. Centuries of wandering the light years had taught him to respect the dangers of Ashura 9's air currents, but he could not quell his excitement. The storms here were legendary, more powerful than any in the Zharov Nebula, erupting in unpredictable cyclones that could swallow a starship whole. Lieutenant Mara Quinn, selected for her unwavering nerve and surgical precision, watched the planet through narrowed eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back into a no-nonsense braid, and her hands hovered over the console that tracked gravitational eddies. "Storm clusters are forming faster than the last scan," she reported, voice taut with concentration. "If we don't thread the needle through that plasma belt, we'll be drifting into the ion lash zone." Zirthal's head tilted, iris fans widening. He understood her meaning without the need for translation protocols. A single miscalculation here could rupture the ship's shielding, and none on board would survive the fallout. He lowered his muzzle to her shoulder, a soft, rumbling purr reverberating through her comm armor. Mara's lips curved in a brief, grateful smile. She tapped a sequence on the console and the freighter's trajectory shifted, sails of gravitic deflectors unfurling like wings of their own. 3 decks below, under the flickering neon lights of the crew quarters, Echo, call sign Echo more by coincidence than choice, sat cross-legged on her cot. Her slim frame belied the steel in her core. She closed her eyes and breathed, visualizing the pattern drills they'd practiced 1,000 times. Breach, hijack, extract. Tonight she was to infiltrate the heart of Ashura 9's insurgent networks and capture a key figure whose knowledge could tip the scales of galactic power. The weight of that responsibility pressed on her, but she welcomed it. Better that than the empty complacency of peace. A sharp chime echoed through the corridors. Lights shifted from ambient blue to alert red. Mara's voice crackled over the comms. "All stations brace for turbulence. Entering the turbulence line in 3, 2. Zirthal unfurled his wings, filling the deck with bronze shimmer, and let loose a resonant roar that drowned out the alarms. The ship lurched, vaulting upward on a cushion of energy as gravitic flares ignited around the hull. Sheets of lightning ripped through the viewport, painting the deck in strobing white. Through that maelstrom, Zirthal's thousands-year-old instincts took over. He beat his wings, creating localized gusts that stabilized the freighter's orientation. Mara's fingers danced across the controls, but it was the dragon's natural command of air currents that kept them alive. Echo, summoned by the chaos, raced up from below, vaulting onto the deck with cat-like grace. Her eyes locked, with the dragons, human and Drakari, predator and ally, bound by a silent understanding. Moments later, the turbulence passed. The storms of Ashura 9 lay behind them, but the true trial was only beginning. From the observation deck, Zirthal watched the planet's surface draw nearer, vast metal factories belching smoke, jagged ruins half submerged in acid lakes, and at the edge of a cracked plateau, the hidden facility where Echo's target was held. His tail coiled with anticipation. They had arrived, but the real descent into darkness and danger awaited them below. A single sputtering lamp hung from a low ceiling of rusted girders, casting long, twitching shadows across the damp stone floor. The stale scent of oil and blood clung to the air. In the center of the room, Echo lay bound to a cold metal slab, her wrists and ankles secured by thick manacles that groaned whenever she moved. Each breath she took rattled through her chest as the mercenaries, faces masked, bodies encased in black exosuits, circulated around her like sharks. They worked in silence, save for the distant hum of machinery overhead and the occasional clink of tools. Echo's dark hair was plastered to her forehead with sweat. Bruises bloomed across her pale skin in shades of violet and green. Still, her emerald eyes burned with unbroken defiance. The lead torturer, his voice modulated by a built-in filter, leaned close and whispered, "Tell us the coordinates. The moment you speak, this ends for you." He pressed a red-hot stylus against her forearm. Echo bit back a scream, the breath catching in her throat, and spat back, "Never!" Behind them, hidden in a slender ventilation duct, Zierthal watched with baleful eyes. His bronze scales shivered with contained fury. Each probe of iron claws and each hiss of heated metal against flesh sent tiny tremors of rage through his massive frame. Contractually, he was forbidden to intervene directly. His role was navigator, not guard. But the sight of humanity's resilience in the face of such cruelty stoked a fire in him that burned hotter than any flame he could breathe. Echo's vision swam as another servant of the Corps produced a syringe filled with a glowing amber fluid. They injected it into the back of her neck. She thrashed green-yellow nanites burrowing beneath her skin to break down her will. Every nerve screamed. Yet Echo centered herself on a single thought: survival. Beneath the veil of pain, she felt the echo of her own heartbeat, steady and stubborn. She called on every memory of training drills, every lesson on resisting interrogation. Let them break her body if they must. She would not give them her mind. In the dimness, Zierthal's tail coiled tighter, knocking a stray wrench from the floor with a nervous clatter. The mercenaries paused, heads swiveling, but saw no threat. The dragon let out a low growl, a sound so elemental it seemed to vibrate the very stones. Echo's breathing stuttered at the resonance, and somewhere, deep in her consciousness, a spark of hope ignited. The night was far from over, and the cellar held its secrets close, but the dragon's silent witness hinted at possibilities no prisoner could foresee. The moment the last mercenary raised his electroblade, time seemed to tear in two. A staccato of tortured metal rang through the cellar as Zierthal's wings unfurled, each membrane a shimmering tapestry of molten bronze and starlight. The dragon's roar shattered the oppressive silence, reverberating off the stone walls and sending echoing tremors through the ground. Sparks flickered from exposed conduits above, ignited by the force of its voice, and for an instant, the entire chamber was bathed in a fiery glow. Masked figures staggered backward, weapons drawn, but their practiced calm cracked beneath the draconic onslaught. Bolts of plasma lanced toward Zierthal's flank, only to vaporize against scales denser than any known alloy. With a single flex of clawed foot, he shattered the closest man's rifle into molten slag. The air filled with the acrid scent of burning circuitry and the sharp metallic tang of fear. Echo, still strapped to the slab, watched the scene through half-lidded eyes. Pain lanced through her limbs, yet adrenaline flared hotter. As a mercenary lunged forward, brandishing a stun baton, she summoned every ounce of willpower and twisted, free. The man's suiting wasn't built for human agility. She sidestepped, grabbed his wrist and slammed him backward into a stack of oil drums that imploded in a deafening crunch. The impact sent a geyser of hydraulic fluid arcing through the air. Meanwhile, Zierthal's tail lashed out like a living whip, sweeping aside two more attackers. One went sprawling into a pool of acidic runoff, wailing as his suit's integrity failed. The other slid along the slick floor, only to collide with the far wall, crumpling like paper. The dragon's eyes, molten gold flecked with amber, locked onto Echo. In that instant, a silent command passed between beast and girl. Run. With incredible strength, Zierthal flexed his wings downward, generating a cushion of uplift that cracked the concrete beneath him. He smashed the manacle's binding. Echo's wrists against the slab's edge, freeing her arms in a shower of sparks and shards. Echo's bloodied fingers brushed against the cold steel one last time before she staggered to her feet, knees shaking but resolve unbroken. Overhead, the grated hatch rattled as security alarms blared throughout the facility. Footsteps thundered in the corridor above. Echo cast a glance at the lone exit, a narrow service tunnel that snaked upward through the complex. She sprinted for it, every step sending jolts of pain through her battered body, but fear lent her strength. Zyrthal followed, his wings tucked low to fit beneath the ceiling, claws tearing grooves into the concrete as he vaulted after her. They emerged into a cavernous maintenance bay, docked by a pair of cargo transports. Red warning lights flashed, painting the cavern in blood-soaked hues. A dozen armed guards patrolled in formation, scanning the darkness. Echo pressed herself against a stack of crates, adrenaline hammering in her ears. Zyrthal crouched beside her, each breath a plume of incandescent warmth. Echo whispered, voice hoarse, "How do we get past them?" The dragon's answer was a low, rumbling growl. He flexed his wings and exhaled a plume of sapphire blue fire that traced intricate patterns across the hull of the nearest transport. The metal warped, releasing a cascade of pressurized coolant that hissed and steamed. Screams erupted as guards scrambled in confusion, their thermal goggles fogging instantly. "Now!" Zyrthal thundered, and together they charged. Echo bounded atop his back, wrapping her arms around his scaled neck as he surged forward in a blur of motion. They crashed through the convocation of stunned soldiers, emerging onto the landing pad just as the freighter's loading bay doors hissed open. Mara Quinn stood at the edge of the bay, fists clenched, eyes wide with disbelief. Before she could shout, Zyrthal leapt, talons digging into reinforced plating. He crouched, allowing Echo to slide off his back and vault onto the deck. She collapsed into Mara's arms, trembling but victorious. Behind them, Zyrthal's roar echoed outward, a challenge to any who dared pursue. The loading bay doors sealed with a thunderous boom, and the celestial marauder's engines ignited. As the ship rocketed skyward, leaving the torture chamber and its horrors far below, Echo found Zyrthal's massive head leaning close. In his molten gold eyes she saw something unexpected, pride. And in that moment, she realized that their bond born of desperation and courage was destined to reshape both their fates. The medbay's lights glowed soft cerulean, casting gentle arcs across the curved walls lined with bioscanners and healing pods. Echo lay reclined on a diagnostics table, her skin pallid where bruises still lingered, yet already faint veins pulsed with an inner light. Around her, surgeon droids hovered on multi-jointed arms, their sensors scanning every fiber of her body. Holographic readouts floated in the air, heart rate, neural activity, cellular integrity, each metric accompanied by a chorus of quiet beeps. Zyrthal pressed against the viewport, his immense silhouette framed by the docking bay beyond. Inside, his bioluminescent ridges shone more brightly than ever, sending ripples of iridescent energy through the medbay's atmosphere. As the droid's nanosutures and healing injectors engaged, tiny filaments of dragon aura wove into their circuits. Where mechanical precision met draconic life force, the two systems merged in a delicate dance. Tendons knitted together in seconds, burn scars melted into smooth skin, and fractures realigned with unheard-of speed. A soft whir announced the activation of the central pod. It slid forward on magnetic skates, its transparent shell reflecting Echo's bandaged form. Within the pod, suspended in a saline mist charged with micronanites, her wounds glowed with faint sapphire veins, an impossible sight that made even the chief surgeon droid hesitate in its calculations. The droid's optical sensors buzzed as they tried to categorize the readings. Subject physiology exceeds baseline human parameters by 142%, it intoned, metallic voice wavering with something akin to awe. Unidentified bioenergetic catalyst present. Echo's eyes fluttered open and Mara Quinn rushed to her side. She reached for Echo's hand, startled to find her fingers cool, yet electrified with energy. "Echo, can you hear me?" Mara pressed her palm to Echo's forehead and recoiled as a pulse of warmth coursed through her arm. Tiny motes of light danced across Echo's skin, drifting upward like embers released into the air. Blinking, Echo sat up. Her hair fell back to reveal eyes that glinted like polished amber, vertical slits dancing at their core. She flexed her arms experimentally, muscles rippling beneath skin as though sculpted by molten bronze. "What happened?" she murmured, voice richer, deeper, echoing with a faint resonance that lingered in the medbay. Sirthal lowered his head until his muzzle nearly touched the glass. A soft rumble vibrated through the floor. His answer, older than words. Their bond was now irrevocable, woven into Echo's very DNA. Mara stared from dragon to human to hybrid comprehension. "Dawning, you're part Drakari," she whispered, awe curdling into excitement. "This changes everything." Beyond the pod's sealed chamber, the freighter's soft hum seemed to hum in unison with Echo's new heartbeat. As the medbay lights dimmed to rest mode, a new life had taken shape. One forged by suffering, reborn in draconic fire, and now ready to claim her destiny. Dawn broke in swirls of amethyst and rose as the celestial marauder slipped through the upper atmosphere of Ashura 9. In the captain's cabin, Echo stood at the viewport, arms crossed over her chest as new wings, still fragile, iridescent membranes, shot with bronze veins, unfurled from her shoulder blades. Each breath she took sent ripples of bioluminescent light coursing beneath her skin. Mara Quinn entered silently, tablet in hand, eyes alight with urgency and awe. "Readings confirm it," Mara said, tapping through ship logs. "Your transformation, completed overnight. You're one of a kind." She swallowed. "Human Drakari hybrid. We can't even classify your blood. You're rewriting xenobiology." Echo flexed her nascent wings experimentally, marveling at how they caught the light. A strand of hair drifted before her eyes, and instead of swatting it away, she reached out with her mind, tugging it gently. The hair obeyed, spinning in midair, caught in a tiny eddy of telekinetic energy. Echo's pulse quickened. She let it go, and the hair floated down like a drifting ash. Before she could react, Sirthal's deep voice resonated in her mind. "Come." No words formed on his jaws, yet she understood perfectly. She rose, wings unfolding to their full span. With a soft click of bone and membrane, Mara followed, awestruck, as Echo stepped onto the open deck. There, bathed in the glow of twin suns breaking over the horizon, stood Sirthal, towering and magnificent. His eyes blazed with pride and something tender as he lowered one wing, beckoning. Echo lifted onto her toes, then launched herself skyward. The first flap sent her soaring gracelessly, more like a stone cast into the sky. But Sirthal swooped alongside, guiding her ascent with precise updrafts. "Feel the currents," he intoned, and she did. The raw turbulence of air whirled around her talons and wings, carrying her higher. Mara watched through binoculars as the duo danced above the ship, a human girl riding astride a dragon through the dawn. Echo's laughter, rich and melodic, carried on the wind. When they touched down, Echo's heart pounded with exhilaration. She knelt before Sirthal, one fist pressed to her chest. "Thank you," she sent to him, and in return felt a rush of warmth that threaded through her veins, his gratitude, his acceptance. Below them, the docking bay doors slid open. Rebels, alerted by encrypted comms, had arrived to reclaim their leader and secure Echo's allegiance. As they marched aboard, Echo stood tall, no longer the captive they had expected, but a being reborn. She strode toward their commander, her wings folding into an elegant cloak of shimmer. Murmurs rippled through the assembled fighters. The commander, an aging woman with silver-streaked braids, bowed in respect. "Child of dragon and star," she breathed, "your coming was prophesied." Behind Echo, Sirthal reared his head, nostrils flaring in a gesture of solemn recognition. Echo raised a hand, pressing her palm against the commander's shoulder. Through the telepathic link she'd just discovered, she shared visions of her trial and the dragon's valor, the electric surge of pain, the cleansing fire, the fusion of their essences. Gasps and exclamations echoed as rebels witnessed the forging of a new legend. Turning, Echo addressed the gathered crowd, voice amplified yet intimate. "We stand at the edge of war and hope. Where cruelty sought to break me, I was reborn in fire. Now I will use this gift to protect the innocent and to bring justice to those who would enslave us." Her eyes glowed like molten embers. The galaxy will remember that when a dragon chooses to fight alongside humankind, the tide of fate itself may turn. With that, she soared upward, wings unfurling in triumphant arc. Zirthal took flight beside her, and together they led the rebels into the sky. Below, the celestial marauder powered engines, bearing them toward a future charged with promise and peril. For Echo had become more than a girl spared. She was the living bridge between two species, a beacon of unity that would reshape the cosmos. And as they flew toward distant stars, she knew with absolute certainty who she was and who she would become.